Welcome to this deep dive. I'm really glad you're here with us today because we are looking at a story that is going to, well, completely reframe how you think about success and ambition.
Yeah, and really the future of humanity as a whole.
Exactly. We're zeroing in on this really profound historical collision. I just want you to picture this for a second. What happens when the ultimate conqueror of the world, a man who has subjugated entire empires, comes face to face with a man who has mastered the art of needing absolutely nothing?
It's just one of the most fascinating standoffs in recorded history
Mm.
because it forces us to ask what real power actually looks like.
Right, so today's stack of sources explores this epic philosophical clash. We're looking at the meeting between Alexander the Great and the ancient Indian yogi Dandamas.
And our mission for this deep dive isn't just to recount some dusty ancient history tale.
No, not at all. We're going to unpack how this specific encounter actually holds a blueprint for our modern survival, like why we desperately need both the relentless drive for external conquest and the quiet wisdom of internal mastery.
Especially if we're going to navigate these massive, wild frontiers we're facing now.
Right, like artificial intelligence, quantum physics, space exploration.
To really grasp this, we have to look past the historical details, the chariots and the spears. We have to see what these two figures actually represent. We're really exploring the binary system of human consciousness. It is that necessary tension between active, ambitious action on one side and introspective, unshakable calm on the other.
So let's set the scene so you can really visualize this. The year is 326 BCE. We're in the Indus Valley. Alexander the Great has arrived.
The conqueror himself.
Yeah, and this is a guy who literally calls himself the son of Zeus. When he's faced with a complex problem, like the legendary Gordian knot, he doesn't sit around trying to untangle it. He just draws his sword and cuts it in half.
Right, he's the absolute embodiment of bold, violent, outward action.
Exactly. And here, in the city of Taxila, his massive, unstoppable army encounters a group of monks,
The Greeks refer to them as the gymnosophists.
which translates to the naked philosophers, right?
Yeah, exactly. These were likely ascetic Hindu or Jain yogis who lived in absolute simplicity. I mean, they possessed no material goods at all. In some cases, they didn't even wear clothes. Their entire existence was dedicated to internal mastery and meditation. They had completely opted out of the rat race of the ancient world.
So Alexander's fascinated, but he's also, he's Alexander. He expects everyone to bow to him.
Of course.
So he sends his messenger, a man named Onesicritus, to summon the eldest and wisest of these yogis, Dandamas. And the messenger delivers a very Alexander-style invitation. He basically says, come to a feast, and the son of Zeus will reward you with magnificent gifts. Refuse, and he will cut off your head.
And the reaction from Dandamas is just incredible. Or, well, rather his lack of a reaction.
Yeah.
According to the historical accounts, he doesn't even bother to lift his head from his bed of leaves.
He just lies there.
Yeah, he is completely unmoved by the threat of violence or the promise of immense wealth.
He just calmly replies that he is also a son of God, and he wants absolutely nothing from Alexander. There is this incredibly powerful quote from the sources where Dandamas says something like, everything Alexander possesses is but a fleeting dream. Let him keep his gold. I have the earth, which provides all I need.
That moment right there is a masterclass in contrasting worldviews. You have a radical clash of power definitions playing out right in the dirt. Alexander measures his power by the vastness of the lands he controls and the millions of people in his armies.
Right.
But then Damis measures his power by his ability to need nothing from the external world.
It's the ultimate paradox of ownership. And Dandamas actually takes it a step further. When threatened with decapitation, he essentially shrugs. He argues that if Alexander cuts off his head, he's merely releasing a soul from an old body so it can be reborn into a better and purer life.
It completely disarms the threat.
Completely. He points out the great equalizer. At the moment of death, a king, no matter how many continents he has conquered, only truly owns the 2 yards of soil covering his body.
Which brings us to Dandamas's ultimate critique, and it is a piercing one. He looks at Alexander, the so-called master of the known world, and sees a man who is entirely ruled by his own relentless anger, his fears, and his insatiable desires.
He tells him he's a slave.
Exactly. He tells him that because he is a slave to his passions, Alexander is actually the slave of a slave.
Wow, the slave of a slave. Because the conqueror can't stop conquering. He has absolutely no control over his own ambition. He's trapped on a treadmill of his own making.
While the yogi, having completely mastered his mind, is the only truly free man in the equation. That is a heavy realization for a guy like Alexander.
It really is. And the yogis didn't just leave Alexander with words, did they?
No, they gave him a very practical visual demonstration of this philosophy. This was done by another yogi named Kalanos.
Yeah, the sources mention an ancient visual lesson, something to do with an ox hide. How did that play out?
This was brilliant. Kalanos took a dry, stiff, completely shriveled ox hide and threw it on the ground right in front of Alexander. Because the leather was so rigid and warped, the moment Kalanos stepped on one edge of the hide, the opposite sides flew up in upheaval.
It wouldn't stay flat.
Right. He walked all around the edges, stomping down, and every single time, the hide reacted violently, kicking up on the other side. It created total instability. No matter where he stepped on the edge, another part rebelled.
Until he changes his approach.
Yes. Finally, Kalanos steps away from the edges and steps directly into the dead center of the hide. When he puts his weight precisely in the middle, the entire hide lays perfectly flat and still.
Let's make this real for a second, because this isn't just about ancient empires. For you, the person listening right now, the edges of the ox hide are your inbox, your social media feed, your career ladder, or maybe your anxiety about the future.
Absolutely.
If you build your life by constantly focusing outward on those edges, chasing external expansion, career conquests, the next big purchase, you will always live in a state of upheaval. The moment you stomp down on one anxiety, another one flips up on the other side of your life.
Because you're trying to conquer the edges instead of standing in the center. True stability only comes from centering on the self. If your center is hollow, no amount of control over the external edges will ever bring you peace. You'll just be running around the perimeter of your life trying to stomp down problems forever.
And the legacy of this encounter is just wild. The conqueror of the world essentially became the student. Alexander was profoundly humbled by this. The sources say he turned to his officers and said, "This man has more wisdom than I have kingdoms."
He even convinced Kalanos to join his court for a time.
Right. And later, when Kalanos fell ill, he chose to undergo a ritual voluntary death by immolating himself on a pyre. He did this with complete calmness, proving to Alexander one final time that he wasn't even a slave to the pain of his own physical body.
That profound demonstration of self-mastery rippled out through history. The stories of these naked philosophers were carried back to the West by Alexander's army. They planted a seed of thought that eventually heavily influenced Western Stoicism.
So the Stoic ideal of absolute self-mastery and indifference to external hardship traces its roots right back to this encounter in the dust of the Indus Valley.
It does. But it's easy to write off Dandames and Kalanos as just ancient philosophers with cool metaphors. The sources transition this discussion into something even bigger. They look at the evolution of consciousness itself.
Which is a huge leap, but it makes sense.
It really does. To understand the evolution of consciousness, which we can think of as the universe or source experiencing itself, we have to look at humanity as a binary system. We need both the inward breath and the outward reach.
I'm going to push back on this a little bit, just playing devil's advocate here. If everyone on Earth were a peaceful yogi, sitting in the lotus pose and needing absolutely nothing, we wouldn't have progress. We'd never have cured polio. We'd never have split the atom. We certainly wouldn't have built the James Webb Space Telescope to peer back to the dawn of time. If we all just sit in the center of the ox hide, nothing gets built.
True. But splitting the atom also gave us the hydrogen bomb, which proves the yogi's exact point. Technological power without internal mastery is just a faster way to destroy yourself.
That's a fair point.
But your premise is fundamentally correct, according to the source material. Alexander represents the extroverted consciousness. He's the engine. In many metaphysical traditions, the idea is that the universe didn't just want to exist in a state of static peace. It wanted to become. It wanted to experience complexity.
It needed friction.
Exactly. That requires the Alexandrian drive to push boundaries, to overcome physical limits, and to understand the building blocks of creation.
So technology is essentially an extension of our biological senses, driven by that Alexandrian hunger. Telescopes are better eyes. The internet is a global nervous system. We need that friction and ambition to evolve outwardly.
We absolutely do. But without the yogi, the Alexander engine becomes a runaway train. The yogi is the compass. As our Alexandrian drive gives us essentially godlike power through technology, we desperately need godlike ethics to govern it.
Otherwise, we end up with environmental ruin, nuclear standoffs, and AI dystopias. We end up acting out the symptoms of Alexander without Dandamis.
The yogi ensures that as we expand, we don't just carry our unhealed inner demons to other planets.
Yeah.
We need to integrate the data Alexander collects with the deeper truth the yogi provides.
The sources frame this using a brilliant metaphor of a cosmic game of hide and seek.
I love this part.
The universe is playing a game with itself. The hide part of the game is the Alexander path. It's consciousness getting deliberately lost in the illusion, the maya of physical matter and the ego. It's the belief that we are separate individuals who must conquer our surroundings to survive.
And then the seek part of the game is the yogi path. It's the part of consciousness that remembers it's all a game. It seeks the original source hidden within the shell of the ego. The ultimate goal of human evolution isn't to pick one side or the other. It's the synthesis of the two.
Becoming what the texts call the sovereign creator.
Right. Someone who uses the tools of the modern world to build and explore, but operates from a place of deep internal stillness.
But is there any hard modern evidence that Dandamis's view of the world, this interconnected stillness, is actually how reality works? Because the sources point out that modern science, specifically quantum physics, seems to be turning the yogi's ancient intuition into Alexander's hard equation.
This is where the synthesis becomes tangible. For centuries, the Alexandrian scientific mindset viewed the universe as a collection of separate, solid things that could be measured, isolated, and conquered. A very mechanical, clockwork view of the universe.
Like billiard balls bouncing off each other.
Exactly. But quantum field theory has completely dismantled that framework over the last century.
Let's break that down for the listener. Because when we say atoms are 99.99999% empty space, it's really hard to wrap your head around. Solid matter, as we perceive it, the device you're listening to this on, the chair you're sitting in, it doesn't really exist in the way we think it does.
Think of it this way. Instead of solid little billiard balls making up the universe, modern physicists understand that matter is just a localized excitation of an underlying field. It's like a wave moving through the ocean. The wave isn't a separate object. It's just the ocean moving in a specific way for a moment.
So it's all one thing.
Yes, this perfectly validates the yogi's ancient concept of Maya, the illusion of the physical, solid world, and prana, the interconnected web of energy that makes up everything.
It goes even deeper with the observer effect. The famous double-slit experiment is mentioned in the stack. Can you explain how that actually works without getting bogged down in the heavy math?
Sure, let's use the spinning coin analogy. Think of a quantum wave function like a spinning coin on a table. While it's spinning, it's essentially a blur of possibilities. It's both heads and tails at the same time.
Okay.
But the exact second you look at it or observe it with a measuring device, it's forced to smack down onto the table and pick one reality. It becomes definitively heads or tails. That's what scientists mean when they say observing a particle changes its behavior. The act of measuring it collapses the wave of possibilities into a single, solid reality.
The scientist realizes that the observer and the experiment are not separate things.
Precisely.
That is mind-bending. It means consciousness isn't just a byproduct of the universe. It's fundamental to it. We aren't just passive victims sitting inside a cold, mechanical universe. We are active co-creators.
Then there's the phenomenon of quantum entanglement, which Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. This proves that two particles, once connected, stay synchronized across the universe instantly, regardless of the space between them. Instantly. If you change the spin of one particle here on Earth, its entangled partner on the other side of the galaxy changes its spin at the exact same moment. No signal travels between them. They're just deeply connected at a fundamental level.
And the ancient Indian concept of Atman, is Brahman, states that the individual soul is one with the universal soul, that separation is just a construct of a limited mind. Now, physics says information can be instantly entangled across galaxies, proving that at a base level, everything is connected.
It's incredible.
The Alexandrian desire to build ships to travel the world is evolving into the yogi's realization that, at a quantum level, we are actually already everywhere.
Which brings us to a very unique inflection point in human history. The sources note that we have largely conquered the external world. We have global connection, we have mapped the globe, we have instant communication in our pockets, but we found it lacking.
It hasn't solved the human condition. Which explains why millions of people are feeling burnt out and turning back to mindfulness, meditation, and the lotus pose. We are looking for the missing piece. So how do we apply this synthesis, this cosmic humanism, to the biggest frontiers we are facing right now? Specifically, artificial intelligence and space exploration.
Let's look at AI first. If we approach artificial intelligence purely with an Alexandrian mindset, it becomes a tool for economic domination. Or worse, an alien intelligence we fear will conquer us.
We treat it like a rival empire.
Right. But through an integrated consciousness, AI becomes a lens into the inner cosmos.
A mirror for the self. I think that is such a profound way to look at the algorithms we interact with every day. AI is basically reflecting our own ego back to us. It forces us to ask, are we going to train it on the internet's greed, outrage, and exploitation, or are we going to feed it compassion and empathy?
And as AI increasingly takes over mundane intellectual and logical labor, it forces a shift in human purpose. It pushes us toward cognitive symbiosis.
What does that look like in practice?
This is where the pure logical coherence of AI merges with human intuition and emotional intelligence. By freeing us from purely computational tasks, the endless spreadsheets and data analysis, it actually creates the space for a more profound spiritual awakening. We won't have to define our worth by our logical output anymore.
What about space travel? Right now, the language we use is very Alexandrian. We talk about conquering Mars or winning the space race. But the sources suggest we need a massive shift from space conquest to space citizenship.
This is where AI acts as a cognitive prosthetic. Our brains evolved to understand the planes of Earth, to hunt and gather. We are not wired to comprehend the vastness of interstellar space or quantum phenomena. We have a sort of planetary blindness.
We can't see the big picture.
Exactly. We absolutely need the immense industrial power of the Alexandrian drive to physically build the spaceships and the life support systems. But we need the meditative silence of the yogi to truly understand where we are once we leave the atmosphere.
We need to hear the music of the spheres. The goal is to make the overview effect the foundational mindset for a peaceful global society.
The overview effect is so crucial here.
Yeah, when astronauts go to space and look back at the Earth, they don't see borders. They see a fragile, incredibly thin atmosphere protecting a single, interconnected ecosystem. It changes them fundamentally. They leave as Alexanders, focused on the mission parameters, and they come back as yogis, overwhelmed by the interconnectedness of it all.
That is the ultimate synthesis. Humanity is transitioning from merely a biological species trying to survive into a truly conscious species trying to understand its place in the cosmos. Technology is the vessel. It gives our soul a functional, visible presence in the physical world, allowing us to manipulate matter and cross oceans of space.
And spirituality is the guide. It ensures that our technology doesn't become a parasitic force that diminishes our humanity or destroys our home. The goal of all of this, from ancient India to modern quantum labs to massive AI servers, isn't to choose between the conqueror and the sage. It's to become the integrated human. It is having the immense godlike power to move mountains, but possessing the deep wisdom to know if those mountains should be moved at all.
Which raises an important question, and it's one I really want to leave you with today.
Let's hear it.
If our technology is fundamentally an evolutionary extension of our biological senses, if telescopes are just better eyes to see the stars, and the internet is just an external nervous system to connect the globe, what happens when our technology finally forces us to realize there is nowhere left to conquer but the silence of our own minds?